Imagine finishing a long, exhausting hospital shift, the scent of the earth still clinging to your shoes, when suddenly the phone rings. On the other end is your daughter's trembling voice in the cold rain. "Mom, my key won't open our door." You rush home, only to find a scene that shatters your heart, belongings thrown onto the street, your child shivering in the storm, and behind the locked door stands your own family, refusing to let you in. Why would the people closest to you abandon you at your most vulnerable moment? And what hidden truth lies behind this betrayal? If you've ever questioned the meaning of family and justice, a gentle like or subscribe will keep you by a side on this emotional journey. The rain was relentless that night, drumming on the roof of your car as you pulled into the driveway. Through the windshield, you saw your daughter huddled under the porch, her backpack soaked, clutching the cat carrier while the storm poured down. Her face was pale, her hair plastered to her cheeks, and her small frame seemed to fold in on itself, as though she was trying to disappear into the shadows. You rushed out into the rain, arms open, trying to shield her with your body. She collapsed into your embrace with a sob, whispering, "Why doesn't my key work anymore, Mom?" Close quote. You didn't know how to answer. The words caught in your throat, heavy as stone. Together, you tried your own key, pushing it into the lock, but it refused to turn. Behind the curtains, you noticed movement. Someone was inside. You knocked harder, calling out, your voice echoing against the storm. And then the door opened, not with warmth, but with cold calculation. Your mother stood there, elegant in her composure, a wine glass resting in her hand, as though the storm outside was nothing more than an inconvenient soundtrack. Her silver hair was perfectly arranged, her gaze sharp and unyielding. Behind her leaned your half-sister, a smirk on her lips, holding her own glass of red wine. The scene felt surreal. Two women sipping comfort while you and your daughter stood drenched, shivering, desperate for entry. "You got here faster than I expected," close quote, your mother remarked, her tone flat, almost rehearsed. You stepped forward, urging your daughter inside. "Why doesn't a key work? What's going on?" Close quote. But instead of opening the door wider, she pressed her hand against it, blocking the way. Her words were like ice. "We've decided you and Lily don't live here anymore." At first, the sentence made no sense. How could a mother disown her child with such clarity, with no hesitation? You blinked, searching for meaning, but found none. Tessa, your sister, leaned forward with a cruel grin. "Your things are already out on the curb. What's left of them anyway? The rain hasn't been kind." And then you saw it. Boxes sagging in the downpour, clothes spilling onto the lawn, textbooks turning into pulp, and photo albums bleeding colors into water. Your daughter's science project lay crumpled, ribbons stained and dissolving. The sight was almost too much to bear. Still, you stayed silent, because sometimes silence is the only weapon left when the world tries to strip you bare. You gathered what you could, your arms heavy with soaked belongings, your heart heavier still. All the while, your mother stood on the porch, her voice cutting through the rain. "Your father spoiled you. This was always my house." Her words struck deeper than the storm. Neighbors watched quietly from behind their curtains, some with pity, others with judgment, but none stepped forward. That night, you drove away to a small hotel, your car loaded with what little could be saved. Inside the cramped room, the smell of damp cardboard filled the air, and your daughter's uniform hung dripping over the shower rod. The cat hid beneath the desk, too frightened to emerge. You sat on the bed surrounded by warped textbooks, ruined memories, and one question pounding in your mind. Why? And then, the next morning, you called your father's lawyer. His voice on the line changed everything. He told you that 6 months before his passing, your father had quietly transferred the house into a trust for you and your daughter. Legally, the house was already yours. Legally, your mother had no right to throw you out. There was even a letter, sealed in your father's handwriting, waiting for you in the lawyer's office. Your hands trembled as you broke the seal later that day. The words inside cut straight into your soul. "If you are reading this, then Marjorie has done exactly what I feared she might. The house belongs to you and Lily now. It always was, in my heart. Take care of our girl, and the home will take care of you both. All my love, Dad." Tears blurred the ink as you held the letter against your chest. The betrayal of your mother had burned you raw, but here, in your father's words, was recognition. Here was validation. He had seen your sacrifices, your devotion, your strength. And in that moment, the storm inside you began to shift. It was no longer only grief and despair, it was also resolve. But the battle had only begun. Your mother and sister had already started moving furniture, painting walls, and settling into what they thought would be their domain. They whispered lies to neighbors, telling them you were unstable, unfit, and erratic after your father's death. They even tried to twist the story at your daughter's school, spreading rumors that cast doubt on your ability to provide her a stable home. It would have been easy to crumble under the weight of it all. Yet something inside you rose up instead. You remembered all the nights in the hospital, guiding strangers back from the edge of death. You remembered your father's voice telling you to carry forward, to never let despair define you. And most of all, you remembered your daughter's eyes looking up at you with trust that cut deeper than any wound. This was no longer about just a house. It was about dignity. It was about justice. It was about protecting the child who depended on you. So you began to fight back. You documented everything. The boxes on the curb, the ruined belongings, the neighbors' silent stares. You gathered testimonies from doctors, teachers, and friends who had witnessed your devotion. You even secured security footage when your brother-in-law tried to intimidate you in a parking lot. Piece by piece, you built a case not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. The rain, once a symbol of your exile, became a strange sort of companion. Each drop against the window of that hotel reminded you that storms can destroy, but they can also cleanse. And in those sleepless nights, as you held your daughter close, you began to wonder, how many others have faced the same silence, the same betrayal, from those who should have loved them most? If you've ever stood on a porch, feeling the weight of rejection from people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever carried the burden of being strong when no one else would, then you already understand what it means to walk through storms. And if this story resonates with you, let your support be a quiet nod of recognition. A simple like or subscribe isn't just a button, it's a way of saying, I see you, I understand, and I stand with you. Because sometimes the greatest comfort comes not from victory, but from knowing you are not alone in the fight. The following days, you and your daughter stayed in that small, crowded hotel room with the cat hiding beneath the desk. Damp cardboard boxes scattered across the floor felt like fragments of a life that had been torn apart. But instead of surrendering to despair, you slowly turned that cramped space into a command center. On the desk lay folders, statements, photographs, evidence neatly arranged. Each piece of paper cut like a blade into the past, yet at the same time became a weapon for the future. You knew this was no longer just a property dispute. It was a fight for dignity, for justice, for your daughter's safety. On the other side, your mother and sister were already moving quickly. They had taken over the house, redecorated, and even told neighbors that you had abandoned your responsibilities. Rumors began to spread like water stains, that you were unstable, unfit, incapable of raising your child. The cruelest part was hearing your daughter whisper those same lies, repeated by classmates at school. One evening, she turned to you hesitantly. Mom, they said I'll have to live with Grandma because you can't keep the house. Is that true? Close quote. Your chest tightened. But instead of breaking down, you took her hand firmly. No, sweetheart. This house belongs to us. Your grandfather made sure of it. I will never let anyone take it away. You just have to trust me. Her eyes filled not with fear this time, but with a fragile confidence. That gaze became the anchor that kept you standing. The next day, you sat across from your father's lawyer in his wood-paneled office. He unfolded documents that bore not only signatures and stamps, but your father's foresight. The house, legally and fully, belonged to you and your daughter through a trust he had created months before his passing. Then, the lawyer handed you another envelope, a letter written in your father's own hand for the court. His words, firm yet tender, explained why he entrusted the house to you and not his wife. Reading those lines was like hearing his voice echo across time, steadying your trembling heart. But the other side was not resting. Your mother began calling relatives, spinning stories of a daughter who had turned cold, abandoning her grieving parent. Your sister paraded online posts filled with selective photos, painting herself as the devoted child and you as the runaway. Each word they spread was a dagger meant to pierce your credibility. There were moments when the weight of it nearly crushed you. And yet, you remembered those endless nights in the emergency room, pulling strangers back from the brink. If you could fight for a heartbeat you had never known, how could you not fight for your own child? So you threw yourself into preparation. You gathered testimonies from colleagues and doctors who had seen your sacrifices. You collected statements from your daughter's teachers, who had witnessed the bond between her and her grandfather. Piece by piece, the fragments became a wall of undeniable truth. Still, just when you thought you could breathe, another blow came. One morning, the hospital director called you in. An anonymous complaint had been filed, questioning your mental stability. For a moment, the air left your lungs. But then your co-workers stepped forward, describing the countless hours you had worked, the precision with which you cared for both patients and your father. Their support steadied you, but the message was clear. Your mother and sister would stop at nothing. They didn't just want the house. They wanted to erase your reputation, your life's work, your very identity. But what they didn't understand was this. The more they tried to strip you down, the more resolve you found within yourself. That night, when your daughter was asleep, you sat by the window. Streetlights shimmered across rain puddles like shards of broken glass. You opened your notebook and wrote, "Strength is not carrying everything. Strength is protecting what matters most. And my daughter is the reason I will not break." The court date drew near. Your heart raced at the thought of standing in front of a judge, facing the very people who had cast you out. But beneath the fear was something steadier: determination. You knew this hearing wasn't only about walls and a roof. It was about truth, about honor, about a little girl's future. And maybe, as you share this story now, someone listening has walked through something similar, betrayed by those who should have loved them most. Maybe they too know what it feels like to carry burdens in silence. If this story resonates with you, let your support be a quiet acknowledgement. A simple like, a subscribe, or even a comment is more than a click, is a way of saying, I understand. I've been there too. And sometimes that solidarity is what carries us through the storm. You looked over at your daughter, asleep with her hand curled under her cheek. The shadows on her face were softer than they had been in days. In that moment, you whispered to yourself, tomorrow, we will return. Tomorrow, justice will speak. When dawn broke, the world felt sharper, clearer. The storm inside had not ended, but you had found your footing within it. With documents in hand, witnesses ready, and faith anchored in both memory and love, you stepped forward. The court awaited, and with it, the moment where truth and courage would stand against deception. The day of the hearing finally arrived. That morning, the sky was clear, yet the air felt heavy, as if the storm still lingered inside your chest. You put on a modest blazer, held your daughter's hand, and stepped into the courthouse. No longer the nurse in scrubs worn from long shifts, today you stood as the plaintiff, our mother, prepared to face everything. News of your festival victory lingered, drawing more visitors. Schoolchildren rushed in, eyes wide as they watched the bees up close. You crouched low, patiently explaining. Bees are not only honey makers, they are guardians of balance, of a world's rhythm. In their awe, you saw your younger self, when Henry first led you to the hives, and fear gave way to wonder. Then came the townspeople, the shopkeepers. They tasted the honey, marveling at its light sweetness, unlike anything else they knew. One woman smiled and whispered, this carries the flavor of the meadows. You smiled back, because that was your wish. Not just to sell honey, but to share memory, to preserve the soul of this land in each golden drop. Seasons passed, and Honey Ridge grew from a small farm into a destination. Newspapers wrote of heritage reborn. Television invited you to share your story. Sitting before the camera, you spoke calmly, no longer with the trembling voice of someone unseen, but with the quiet strength of one who had walked through shadow and found her light again. Each word you spoke wasn't only about bees or soil, but about holding on to faith when the world turns its back. Yet, when you returned home after those appearances, silence pressed in once more. Opening the door, you heard only wind slipping through cracks in the wood. You remembered Thomas, remembered Henry, remembered the sound of laughter over an old pot of tea. But within that stillness, you learned to converse with yourself. The beating of your heart, the steady breath in your chest, like the hum inside the hives, reminded you that you still existed, existing for a promise. One afternoon, while checking the new hives, a boy approached. His face was shy, his eyes bright. He handed you a piece of paper. Miss, I heard your story. I often feel invisible too. Can you teach me how to find my voice? Close quote. You froze. The short note pierced your memory like a needle. Kneeling down, you took his small hand and whispered, your voice is already here. If you believe in it, it will be heard. In that moment, you realized Honey Ridge was no longer just your story. It had become a haven for others, for those who once felt lost, a place to find hope and begin again. Sometimes, Delia returned. This time, her eyes no longer glinted with arrogance, but carried the shadow of regret. She hesitated. You've done something I never thought possible. Maybe I was wrong. You looked at her, your heart soft yet cautious. Forgiveness did not mean letting her claim Honey Ridge. But for the first time, you saw acknowledgement in her gaze. The days moved forward, and you continued expanding Honey Ridge. You built educational programs, inviting students, welcoming communities to learn about bees, about nature's delicate bond with humanity. People remembered Honey Ridge not only as a farm, but as a symbol of belief reborn, of heritage reclaimed. One evening, sunset painted the sky gold. You stood watching the bees swirl, their wings catching light like tiny sparks in the air. Inside, you heard that familiar voice. Do not let your voice be buried. And you smiled, for now your voice was no longer echoing inside an empty house. It was carried outward, reaching hearts beyond your own. And you wondered how many others out there have felt invisible, dismissed, forgotten. If they walked into Honey Ridge today, would they too discover hope, the way you once did? Honey Ridge entered a new season. In the gentle warmth of spring, the fields stretched wide with lavender and sunflowers, their fragrance drifting across the valley, mingling with the restless hum of bees. Children still ran through the grass, their laughter carrying in the wind, while elders from town came just to sit on the long wooden bench beneath the porch and watch the hives. You walked past them, hearing conversations, soft chuckles, and you realized the farm was no longer a place you bore alone. It had become the heart of a community, beating in rhythm with many lives. Every morning, when the sun rose above the hills, gold light flooded the farmhouse roof. You opened the door and breathed deeply, letting the crisp air fill you. The hum of bees rose like a private symphony, a greeting to the new day. Sometimes you stood still, letting that sound wash over you, as if it were your own heartbeat. Once, you had been someone hidden in shadows. Now, you had created a space where others could come and find faith. News of Honey Ridge traveled beyond town borders. Newspapers called the farm a symbol of rebirth, a place where grief was transformed into hope. Reporters came asking, what kept you here when everyone else walked away? You smiled softly and answered, I heard the bees, and I knew I was never truly alone. That simple reply spread far, quoted again and again, not just as an explanation, but as a message to anyone still stumbling in the dark. One day, an invitation arrived. You were asked to speak at a conference on sustainable farming. Under the harsh glow of stage lights, with hundreds of faces before you, you told your story not polished, not hidden. You spoke of sleepless nights, of calloused hands, of rejection after rejection, and finally, of a small but enduring belief as delicate as a bee's wing that carried you forward. When you finished, the audience rose in applause. In that moment, you were no longer the child laughed at by her family. You were living proof that even in solitude, a person can build an entire world. The days moved forward and you continued expanding Honey Ridge. You built educational programs, inviting students, welcoming communities to learn about bees, about nature's delicate bond with humanity. People remembered Honey Ridge not only as a farm, but as a symbol of belief reborn, of heritage reclaimed. One evening, sunset painted the sky gold. You stood watching the bees swirl, their wings catching light like tiny sparks in the air. Inside, you heard that familiar voice. Do not let your voice be buried. And you smiled, for now your voice was no longer echoing inside an empty house. It was carried outward, reaching hearts beyond your own. And you wondered how many others out there have felt invisible, dismissed, forgotten. If they walked into Honey Ridge today, would they too discover hope, the way you once did? Honey Ridge entered a new season. In the gentle warmth of spring, the fields stretched wide with lavender and sunflowers, their fragrance drifting across the valley, mingling with the restless hum of bees. Children still ran through the grass, their laughter carrying in the wind, while elders from town came just to sit on the long wooden bench beneath the porch and watch the hives. You walked past them, hearing conversations, soft chuckles, and you realized the farm was no longer a place you bore alone. It had become the heart of a community, beating in rhythm with many lives. Every morning, when the sun rose above the hills, gold light flooded the farmhouse roof. You opened the door and breathed deeply, letting the crisp air fill you. The hum of bees rose like a private symphony, a greeting to the new day. Sometimes you stood still, letting that sound wash over you, as if it were your own heartbeat. Once, you had been someone hidden in shadows. Now, you had created a space where others could come and find faith. News of Honey Ridge traveled beyond town borders. Newspapers called the farm a symbol of rebirth, a place where grief was transformed into hope. Reporters came asking, what kept you here when everyone else walked away? You smiled softly and answered, I heard the bees, and I knew I was never truly alone. That simple reply spread far, quoted again and again, not just as an explanation, but as a message to anyone still stumbling in the dark. One day, an invitation arrived. You were asked to speak at a conference on sustainable farming. Under the harsh glow of stage lights, with hundreds of faces before you, you told your story not polished, not hidden. You spoke of sleepless nights, of calloused hands, of rejection after rejection, and finally, of a small but enduring belief as delicate as a bee's wing that carried you forward. When you finished, the audience rose in applause. In that moment, you were no longer the child laughed at by her family. You were living proof that even in solitude, a person can build an entire world. Yet, when you returned to Honey Ridge, Delia stood at the gate. No glittering dresses, only a simple coat, her face weary. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she whispered, I was wrong. I was jealous, and I hurt you. You froze, heart tightening, old memories flooding back her mockery, her dismissal. But in her gaze, for the first time, you saw truth. Regret. You did not answer right away. Instead, you led her along the rows of hives. Bees swirled tirelessly, their wings catching the light. You pointed to them and said, they don't ask who matters more. Each one does its part. If a bee tries to prove it's greater than the rest, the hive collapses. Delia bowed her head, tears spilling freely. You didn't embrace her, nor did you turn away. You left her there in silence, like a door cracked open. Forgiveness might begin, but trust takes time. Afterward, you poured your strength into expanding Honey Ridge. A greenhouse rose, where children planted small flowers for the bees to visit. A classroom was carved from the old farmhouse, its walls hung with photographs of Henry and Thomas. When you spoke of them, you called them the two teachers of Honey Ridge. Listeners sat quietly, eyes shining with respect not only for the past, but for the journey you had carried into the present. Gradually, Honey Ridge became a place people longed to see. Not just to buy honey, but to hear the story, to touch the soil of faith. Children wrote small letters. "Miss, because of you, I know being different still has value." Adults confessed softly. "This place reminds us failure is not the end." You read each one, and understood Honey Ridge had outgrown the walls of a farm. It had become a symbol. One evening, as sunset blazed red across the valley, you sat on the porch steps. Before you, bees flew in golden light, their wings glittering like falling stars. On the table, jars of honey stood in rows, catching the last rays, glowing like lanterns in the dusk. Inside those jars lived more than sweetness, they held fragments of memory. Henry's hands, Thomas's laughter, the shy eyes of the boy searching for his voice, and even Delia's tears. You reached out, fingers brushing one jar, and your heart trembled. Within it was not only honey, but the bitters endured, the times you stood up from collapse, the long nights of faith. You wondered, do people only discover themselves when forced through shadow? If you had not been dismissed, would you stand this strong today? Without loss, would you treasure every drop of honey, every fragile hum in the air? The answer remained uncertain. Yet one truth pulsed clear. Honey Ridge was living proof that from what seems broken, people can rebuild. If they hold faith, patience, and courage, they can turn ashes into life. And in that evening glow, bees still flew, honey still glistened, and your voice, the voice once buried, now carried outward. No longer confined to the old wooden house, it reached into the hearts of those who came seeking something precious. The belief that life can begin again, even from ruin. As night slowly settled over the valley, you sat quietly on the porch, the last rays of sunset still lingering on jars of golden honey. The gentle hum of bees filled the still air, blending with the rustle of wind like a timeless melody of life itself. In each sound, you could hear the echoes of your journey. The sting of being dismissed, the strength of reclaiming your voice, and the rebirth of Honey Ridge. You closed your eyes and smiled. Not the smile of victory, but the quiet smile of a soul that has learned to rise after being broken. You knew the road ahead was still long, yet fear no longer held you. For now, your voice was no longer hidden, it resonated, not only within the wooden farmhouse, but within the hearts of those who had come to Honey Ridge seeking hope.